So this is the AT&T specific review of the Samsung Galaxy S3. It's coming to the States, it's coming on 5 different carriers, but before we get too much into the review, let's give some love to Best Buy Mobile for hooking us up with phones like the Galaxy S3 on AT&T and Sprint for use in our One Paw Bandit giveaway game. When you go into Best Buy Mobile, you'll walk out working, they'll help you set up your email, your web, they'll get you set up with a flip case, assuming they're selling those, and more, because when you walk out the door at Best Buy Mobile, you're working. So let's take a look. This is the AT&T Samsung Galaxy S3. It's coming soon, and you can see the changes here. 4G LTE capabilities, your AT&T icons, or your text rather, and then you can see the signal strength indicator bar is just ever so slightly different. 5 bars as opposed to 4 on the international version and 6 on the Sprint version. Now, this device is a little bit different, first of all, because I have the flip case installed on it. So you can see what these look like. This is an accessory that's made by Samsung, and it's going to be coming to some stores in the US. Now, the cool thing about it, Samsung's been pretty clear about letting me know that the international version and the US version, at least in terms of size, are exactly the same. So if you get this, it'll work on the international version, it'll work on the US version, which is a really nice thing. There's compatibility when it comes to accessories. Always a plus. So otherwise, spec-wise, a little bit different here. It's got a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 processor, a 4.8-inch Super AMOLED HD display, a 1.9 megapixel front-facing camera, 8 megapixel camera on the back with 1080p HD video recording. It's got the same 2,100 milliamp hour battery in the back, but it's packing 4G LTE on AT&T. So obviously, it's going to be a little bit more of a battery hog because of the LTE capabilities. And I'll tell you, I've been working with this device for a couple of days now. Now that the embargoes are lifted, we can talk about this. I've had it for about 4 or 5 days, and I will tell you there's a noticeable battery difference as a result of LTE. Now, obviously, it's nice to have LTE. Speeds are a little bit faster, so that's something to keep in mind. You are getting some better network performance, at least in terms of speed, but you are sacrificing some battery life at the expense of awesome network speeds. Out of the gate, you'll get some AT&T stuff. You'll notice, of course, all share play, things like that pre-installed, but you're going to come over here and see things like AT&T messages. You're going to see My AT&T. You're going to see YP Mobile. And then you're going to see, I thought there was, there it is, AT&T Navigator pre-installed on this as well. So you get some AT&T stuff out of the gate. Otherwise, widgets, pretty similar look and feel here. No real differences there. You notice the AT&T network identifier stays up top, and like I said, LTE capabilities up there as well. Otherwise, no real huge differences in terms of look and feel. Same power button location, same volume rocker, and you've got your 3.5 millimeter headphone jack up top and your micro USB charging port at the bottom. So again, if you're looking for a full review, check out the international review I did, because at least in terms of look and feel, it's exactly the same. There are some minor changes though, and I'll show you this. Take a look at the widgets, because obviously with AT&T applications, you'll see some differences when it comes to those. You'll notice some AT&T stuff, AT&T Navigator, AT&T Traffic, AT&T Search, but otherwise kind of same look and feel here. Now the big question is, the processor's a little bit different here. You only get a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon S4 CPU, and while that's been known, at least from the HTC devices like the 1X and the 1S, to be a really good processor, it's still kind of the questions out there, is it as good as the 1.4 gigahertz quad-core Exynos processor that's on the international version? Now, you don't just get the processor, they've also upgraded the RAM. You get 2 gigabytes of RAM in this version, and as you can see, pardon me while I pull it out of the screen here so I can show you the task manager, you'll see the RAM status here with 1.62. That's what's available. You get 2 gigabytes out of the gate. And overall, I'll tell you it's a fast device. But what I will tell you, after working with the international version for about 2 weeks and working with these for about 5 days, there's a slightly, and if you're a phone geek, you're going to notice this, there is a slight speed difference between the international version and the US version. Think of it like this. With the US version, and I'm going to come into something, let's go into internet, for example, and take a look here. And we'll go to phonedog.com. For example, and it's going to be hard to kind of show you on this, but what I'll tell you is that with the US version, it's very fast with the occasional stutter. You do get an occasional stutter on the US version. The Exynos one, the quad-core Exynos international version, it's a little bit more like the older, wiser brother. Think of it like that. It's just a little bit slower, at least this is my experience, a little bit slower, but it's more fluid. So the fluidity is a little bit better. The transition effects may take ever so slightly longer, but it's a constant, consistent experience every single time. That seems to be my experience with both of these devices. Otherwise, very responsive here with little to no lag on the browser. Samsung also has some other cool things like Tactiles. So what Tactiles are programmable NFC stickers that Samsung is planning to sell. Now you have to download the application from Google Play, but once you get it in here, you can come in and configure your Tactile to do a lot of different things. You can change it, you can make a call, send a text message, and when the phone picks it up via NFC, it'll do what it's told to do. Now this one I configured, and hopefully it'll work right with this flip case in the back. Let's try it. Aaron from Phone Dog rocks my socks. I had it programmed to whenever you swipe over that, it'll display that on the screen. Pretty cool feature there. Again, Tactiles are available through Samsung. It's going to be an accessory that you can get in the store. Hopefully stores like Best Buy and other places will sell those, so you can buy those along with your flip case and your new device. But really useful features, things you can put on business cards and more. Now, of course, you want to see quadrant standard because we look at the device, the international one, and you've seen speeds as fast as 5,600 or almost 5,600. Let's take a look at the AT&T version because this one is running a dual-core Snapdragon S4 CPU. What I will say, though, is after using the international version and going over to this one, because I've been using this one for about 4 days now, or 5 days as my personal device as part of the 30-day Samsung Galaxy S3 challenge I'm doing, the earpiece is much louder on the US version, and you have the ability to make it even louder if you want to via a little button on the display called extra volume. So that's a nice touch. Overall call quality, very impressive, but like I said in the beginning of the review, battery life leaves a little bit to be desired. It's still great, don't get me wrong, with a 2,100 milliamp hour battery. It's not going to disappoint you by any means, but it could be a little bit better. And after working with the HSPA Plus model, I'd say you're going to get about 12 hours of use with moderate use out of this. So much less in my opinion, than the 16 to 17 hours I was getting on the international Galaxy S3. But, still relatively impressive nonetheless, and it's a decent-sized battery. Now, here's quadrant standard, 4,976 over on the US version. So you can see it's just a little bit slower. Although, like anything, take this with a grain of salt. Now, speed test over here, 4G LTE capabilities. Charlotte metro area doesn't really do so great with 4G LTE on AT&T. It's moderate, but you'll see speeds between 4 to 7 if you live here with bursts of up to 10. And then if you're in one of those crazy markets, you may see something as high as 35 or 40 megabits per second. But right now you can see, for example, about 3 megabits per second. Still relatively fast. That's on par with what we see with AT&T's LTE speeds in the city, about 4 megabits per second. And then on the upload, you'll see between 4 and about 6 megabits per second. So pretty impressive. Much more coverage, or at least pretty impressive, I should say, for AT&T's LTE, right on par with what we've seen in the past. Much more coverage to come on PhoneDog.com with the AT&T version of the Samsung Galaxy S3 and all of the US versions on PhoneDog.com. Keep it locked on the site. Like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/PhoneDog. Hit me up on Twitter with any questions you have about the US versions versus the international version, or just anything that comes to mind. Little cool features that have carried over across the versions, like the battery percentage indicator. Hit me up. PhoneDog Aaron on Twitter, PhoneDog_Aaron at that, and on Facebook at Facebook.com/PhoneDogAB. Thanks for watching. More coverage to come on the US versions of the Samsung Galaxy S3.